Hello everyone, welcome to your first ed puzzle lesson. So we're going to review some special angle pairs. I'm going to kind of go quickly through the first two because you should be the most familiar with these. And the first one are supplementary angles, okay? And so supplementary angles are two angles that have a sum of 180 degrees. So here, in the illustrations down here, let's look on this side first. So these two angles are supplementary because if you were to add 135 plus 45 degrees, that equals 180 degrees. So these two are examples of supplementary angles, okay? The other type of supplementary angles would be two angles that would form a straight line. So if you notice here, you have a straight line. And then the two angles, if we were to put them together, they form that straight line, and the angle measure of a straight line is always 180 degrees. So A plus B equals 180. So here's another example of two supplementary angles. And so that's what the properties and facts means up here, is that angles don't have to share a ray or a side, is a better way to put it, in order to be supplementary. It can be like this example here, where you have two that aren't sharing a side and aren't connected to each other that are supplementary, or you can have two that are sharing a side. So I forgot to point that out. So this is the side that they're sharing, okay? And then when you put them together, they form a straight angle, which is 180 degrees. All right, next, complementary angles. Okay, so with complementary angles, these are two angles that have a sum of 90 degrees. Okay, so down here, again, we have two examples. We'll start with this example first. So these two are complementary because if you were to add up 45 to 45, you get 90 degrees. So these two angles are considered complementary. Now, this right here, I would have to put this symbol here before you would know that these are complementary to let you know, because if this is 90, then these two are 90 as well, okay? So sometimes they'll be like the supplementary angle. You can have two angles that share a side, so they're sharing this side. And then angle A is formed from that side to this. So from there, that's angle A. And then angle B is from here, this side, the side that it shares with A, and this side is angle B. And A plus B equals 90. Okay? And pretty much you usually see this. Now, sometimes, you know, like on IXL on one of them, they may not show that there, but it won't be on ones where you're trying to find out the number. Okay? And that's it on that one. All right, two more special types of angles. First, vertical angles. Vertical angles are formed when two lines intersect each other, okay? And then the vertical angles are the ones that are opposite each other. So right here at this example, you see the two lines that are intersecting. Angle A and angle B would be vertical angles. Now, I didn't label these other two angles that are formed as well, so we'll call them, I don't know, M and N. Well, angle M and angle N would be vertical angles as well. And vertical angles, their property is that they are congruent to each other. So therefore, whatever the measure of angle A is, it equals the measure of angle B. So that's why I only put one, and you can kind of see. And then M and N are bigger angles, but they're congruent to each other. So for the second example here, you see 55 equals 55. Okay, they have to share a vertex, so notice they share a vertex, all right? But they don't share a side. Vertical angles will never share a side. They can't, okay? So remember, vertical angles are congruent, and they're formed when two lines intersect and they share a common vertex. Okay? All right. Next, the last angle pair that I want to review with you are adjacent angles. Adjacent angles are just two angles that share a common vertex and a common ray, or remember that's the same thing as saying side. Okay? They are not necessarily congruent to each other. They don't necessarily add up to 180 or 90. Okay, although those that we had in the earlier examples would be examples of supplementary plus being adjacent. So here in the illustration, you can see the A and B are adjacent. Okay, because they share a vertex and they share a side. Okay, in this example, A and B are adjacent. Okay, but I want to point out that they are not vertical. Notice they share this vertex and they share this side right here. Okay, and remember, with vertical angles, they don't share a side; they only share a vertex. Okay, so over here to this example, I want to point out that they have to tell you, because, you know, right here we can see this is in a 90-degree angle. So the only way we could figure out what the measure of angle WYZ is, WYZ, this angle, is if they told us what the measure of this bigger angle was. And they did. They said that it's 75 degrees. So all the way from here to here is 75. We need to find this angle measure. So therefore, what we would do is just subtract 47 from 75, and we get that it is 28 degrees. Okay, so now we're just going to do a little bit of practice, and if you read the directions up here, it says identify angles A and B. So all of these 1 through 5 are using the letters A and B. So we're going to identify them as being supplementary, complementary, vertical, or adjacent. Also, if an angle can be classified as more than one type, we're going to write all that apply. Okay? So, for number 1, angles A and B, how would you categorize these angles? Well, they would be adjacent, because they share this side and they share this vertex, and they would be supplementary because when put together they form a straight line, and a straight line has an angle measure of 180 degrees. Okay, on to number 2. How can we classify angles A and B here? Well, they are adjacent because they share a vertex and they share this side, and they are complementary because we see that this symbol here, which means 90 degrees, and we can tell from the picture that when we put A and B together, it forms that 90 degrees, so therefore they're complementary. Okay, number 3. Angles A and B would be vertical angles. Okay, and that's all that applies for that one. Just as a reminder, vertical angles are congruent. So this measure would equal this measure. Okay, number 4, it says find the measure of angle B. So, first off, let's look at this angle and angle B and tell me how are they related, or what type of angles do they form. They form a straight line, which means that they are supplementary. Therefore, to figure out what angle B is, I would subtract 142 from 180. And so therefore angle B equals 38 degrees. Okay, last example here, find the measure of angle B, justify your answer. So if I look at angle B and I look at the information that they've given me, I see that this right here means 90 degrees. I see that that angle and angle B share this vertex and they're opposite of each other. Therefore, they are vertical angles and congruent. So that would mean B equals 90 degrees. All right, so we're going to do a few more examples, and so we'll start here with this one on top. We need to figure out what the missing angle measure is, and you'll know which one I'm asking for because I put a letter there. So this first example, we kind of saw one like this on the other page. So angle Y and angle 45 are adjacent, and they form a straight line, which means that is 180 degrees total. So, therefore, I would need to subtract 45 from 180 to get the measure of angle Y. So, what is the measure of angle Y? It is 135 degrees. Okay. All right, the next one down here, we're looking for the measure of angle X. Okay, and the other information that I have is this angle measure here. I notice that they share a common vertex. They're formed by intersecting lines, so they're vertical angles, and vertical angles are congruent. Remember, that's the symbol for congruent. So therefore, X equals 150 degrees. All right, last two examples here. So I'm going to start with this question here, looking for angle D. We're being asked to find this angle. And the information that they've given us is that this little angle here is 30. And then the bigger angle put together, because D and 30 are adjacent angles, and then with this red thing right here in this 80 degree, what they're telling you is that these two together make an 80 degree angle. So to figure out what the measure of angle D is, we would subtract 30 from 80, and D would equal 50 degrees. Okay. All right, last example again. Pay attention to this, which means 90 degrees. The other thing is that F, which is what I'm looking for, and 38 degrees are adjacent, and they form 90 degrees. So therefore, to find the measure of angle F, you would subtract 38 from 90, and angle F would equal 52 degrees.